So we're buried budgets.
Here we go. We're gonna open the October 9th Planning and Zoning regular meeting. Boom. Okay, that would be the call to order. I guess I should get more formal. Citizens' comments would be our first action of the evening. I will remind anyone in the audience that any comments that you may or may not want to bring forward cannot be about the topics or content of the two public hearings that we are going to be dealing with tonight. But anything else is welcome, and if you would like, you're welcome to come to the podium, your name, resident, city, and tell us all. Do we have any public comments unrelated to the public hearings tonight? Not seeing any, no? Dawn?
No.
No? No? All right, because I'm looking at you two. Okay, so having none, we're gonna move on to the active agenda. Our first order is approval of the September 25th, 2024 meeting minutes. Did everyone have an opportunity to review those? Did anyone have any alterations, changes, or issues? Yes, Mo?
One minor one on page 7, where we were talking about tabling the rezoning, should be tabled. Be in there.
Double?
I'm that person. Sorry. Tabled, past tense.
Tabled, please. Is that on
Page 7.
Would be,
It wasn't tabled,
it was.
it was
It
continued.
was continued.
It was continued, but I'm just saying the word has to be tabled.
Grammar needs to
Table.
be correct.
It's a table.
I'm a spelling, I am the
No, let me look
punctuation,
at-
spelling,
let me look
grammar
at-
Nazi.
Show me.
Okay, I'm sure
What does it
Dawn will investigate that
Right there.
and maybe,
No, it wasn't tabled.
I know,
But
Oh,
I'm doing a word correction on that sentence.
I think that's the wrong word.
Well, but that's what I recommended. We corrected it later on.
Oh, gotcha.
But
Okay, sorry.
that was your motion.
yes,
Oh.
So it's in reference to your motion,
Okay.
reiterating the motion you made that evening, correct? Okay, so are there any additional corrections? Okay, barring that, I would accept a motion with the correction in spelling as identified by Mo to approve minutes. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chairman, I so move.
Oh, wait, I did notice,
Here, let me see.
I just, sorry, on page 8, it has, so where it's talking about the request for reconsideration, it says, Commissioner Bronson, she motioned to approve it, and then it says Chair Yakaboni seconded. So should that be changed to Vice Chair?
Well, I mean,
I can work, I'm not trying to nitpick it, but.
yeah.
you know, because it's
Yes.
gonna make a difference
Technically,
in
you're
pay.
correct.
Wish.
Welcome, former or fellow Nazi.
Okay, so
I'm
just
glad
add the
it's not
word
just
vice
me.
chair.
Yes.
Okay. All right, now can we have a motion? Yes.
I would move that we accept the minutes as changed with the tabled and the vice chair.
Okay, modifications.
I will
To
second
existing.
that, Madam
Thank you. We have a motion. It is seconded. All in favor of approval of the September 25th minutes? Aye.
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 Any opposed?
I would like to abstain.
All right. Row no's. All right, so passed. Thank you, everyone. All right. Our next issue is approval of the reason statement of relevant criteria and standards on conditional use permit applications CUP 24-4 by Sarah Bennett of Riverside Recovery. You recall 1720 18th Avenue, an extension of an existing property. We had drafted, had the staff draft the statement. Do we have any alterations, changes to that as drafted? No? All right, I would be open to a motion to approve and forward it on.
Madam Chair, I will make a motion to approve the reason statement for CUP 24-4 as presented.
Thank you. And a second, anyone?
Seconded.
Thank you, Kathy. It's been motioned and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? One abstention. There we go. I'm gonna go with it. Thank you, Kevin. So, carry on, Dawn. Okay, agenda item. Continuation of public hearing and subsequent deliberation and direction to staff regarding the reason statement for zone change application ZNC 24-4 by Chris Clark. And as such, this is a continuation of the public meeting that we did hold on September 25th, and we had a few questions and we asked for clarification, and Joel is here. So hit it, Joel.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't at the original hearing. So I'm here to provide any clarifying information that I can. Did you guys want to look at any maps or anything again, or just want to shoot away with questions?
Can we go ahead and get just the overlay, of thing, the map with the overlay on it, the zone overlay?
So this is a depiction of our GIS with the zoning layer turned on.
Thank you.
Subject property is located in the center of the red area, right up top of the blue. It's 132 Thane Road. It's currently zoned C3 commercial, and the applicant is requesting that the easterly part of the property that's shown in black outline there be rezoned to R3 to extend the existing R3 zone from the south up through the easterly portion of his property. That portion of the property is approximately 5,355 square feet. If rezoned, it does not create a new lot. The existing lot size and configuration would remain the same. But I understand that you may have questions about some of those issues related to that. So it would create a split zoned property.
My first question is, do we have split zones in Lewiston already?
We do.
We do.
So I have, there was a depiction in your packet. This guy. Put it up on the screen.
Thank you.
This is a GIS print of the Bryden Avenue corridor, which runs east-west through the center of this aerial photograph. North is up. It's kind of hard to differentiate, but the lighter colored brown area is the Bryden Avenue Special Planning Area A zoning district. And then the darker brown areas to the north and the south of it are the Bryden Avenue Special Planning Area B zoning district. And you can see that line runs through the southern part of that parcel, the southern part of this one, the southern part of that one. It splits that one. It splits these up here, it splits these, it splits them all the way up and down the corridor. This is just one shot of one block. And this is a rezone that was initiated by the city to create that condition. So it does exist. This is only, and the Bryden Avenue corridor is only one example of that. There are other parts of the city that have split zone parcels as well.
Thank you. Mo?
I think my biggest differential in that, Joel, would be that, do we have any other instances where we've split a building?
I'm not sure.
As to me, there's a big difference between a split zone on a parcel of property versus a building.
So my emphasis to you folks is to, whatever your question or concern might be, how do you tie it to one of the criteria that you have to find for the rezone?
So section 37-10 of the zoning code talks about zone boundaries.
Mhm.
And says unless otherwise specified.
Right?
There's section lines, subdivision lines. My biggest concern with this is that if we approve this, we're creating a slippery slope where anybody can come in and want to rezone a section of a building into whatever the neighboring thing is. And that all of a sudden, we're dealing with, and we've got this.
Any such application would have to be judged against what your relevant criteria and standards are.
Okay.
And 37-10 is not one of them.
Okay. I actually do. So when, in the previous presentation, there was discussion about how the current building and parking situation is actually out of compliance with the zone because the second driveway had to go in and therefore losing 2 parking spaces. So when I looked at R3, R3 has some, let me see if I can get myself situated. R3, which is the requested zone, has a setback, I think it's 15-foot combined between.
So the setback situation does not change with this proposal. Setbacks are taken from property lines, not zoning district boundary lines. The property lines are not changing here.
I understand that, but you're going into residence.
Yeah.
And if you look at the existing structure,
Mhm,
which is going along with that,
right.
one would presume that the existing structure then falls under the criteria of like,
Yep.
what is it, 20 feet backyard
Correct.
distance?
Yep.
Okay, so one of the things we asked last meeting was what is the distance from the back of the building to that property line? What is there was some
Yeah, so here's
discourse between that.
a survey that was done. And it's gonna be very hard to read.
Yes, especially off screen.
Yeah, let's see here. Do I minimize this or make it smaller? Where is it? It shows that as 11 and a half feet is what I recall. And it's listed right here.
Okay.
11 and a half or 10 and a half. Is it 10 and a half or 11 and a half? Or 11 and a half. So if this rezone is approved, this part of the building, which would go to R3 zone,
Mhm,
would become non-conforming
mhm.
in terms of the setbacks for the side and the rear yard standards of the R3 zone.
Yes,
The non-conforming inherently means legal. And definition of that, well, it presumes legal. It just changes the conditions so that it no longer meets the standards since there was a change.
mhm.
It's addressed in the zoning code. It puts some limitations on rebuilding the structure, might require a conditional use permit to rebuild it. The applicant is aware of this situation and accepts it.
I understand accepts it, but there's a lot of discussion about the 2 residents
Mhm.
having potentially back patios, et cetera, and you are already talking not 20 feet, which is required by R3.
Yeah.
But instead not even 15 feet and adding patios. And so are there gonna be requirements, which are currently in R3, about privacy screens if they're gonna be non-conforming?
So, yeah, this is actually not a development proposal. It's really just a rezone proposal. If the rezone is approved and building permit applications are made to do the conversion of this part of the structure from commercial to residential, staff will review to make sure that there's no additional nonconformity created above and beyond the existing conditions. So nothing would be allowed to get any closer to the property line than it already is. So the only patio that would be allowed would be just flat work. No roof, no covered structure, nothing like that.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Mo.
I'm also looking at section 35-45 for lot size. So in an R3, it's supposed to be minimum of 6,000 square feet for 1 unit.
Yep.
Plus an additional 2,500 for a second unit, so that's 8,500.
Yeah.
So we're nowhere close to that.
Well,
Lot width has to be a
Yeah.
minimum of 60. We're nowhere near that. I just,
If you view it as a lot.
Well, we have to.
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
kind of have to,
Yeah, we're
yeah,
kind of confused.
you know, and then the yard obviously is not
So,
fitting, and then also the lot coverage, sorry.
so Madam Chairman,
Yes.
Joel, are there any other residences along Thane? Or would this be a unique thing?
No, there are other residences along Thane as well.
Hang on, Shay.
Gather my thoughts. So I guess that was my main concern with section 37-45 was we're not even meeting the minimum requirements for the lot size. I mean, and if we're at the comprehensive plan, like we want, I understand that we have a need for additional housing development in the area, but if we also want it to be suitable for them to live in.
Yeah, so just as a reference to that, in case you're curious. I did the math on it. The comp plan calls for, within the comp plan designation for this property, it calls for supporting residential uses, so, you know, it identifies multifamily and attached dwelling units as a supporting use within the neighborhood commercial future land use map designation. And residential that goes in that designation is allowed to go up to 8 units per acre. If you do the math on this, it comes out to 4.7.
That actually brings me to something, my question. So when I look at R3 and the comprehensive plan has that corridor commercial straight out. And that does not change. That was, so in both C4 and C5, residents are a given in the upper portion of any building and with the CUP allowed, a successful CUP allowed on ground floor. So why the decision R3 versus perhaps C4 or C5? Because in the Thane corridor, there are many pockets of C3 and C4. And so to me, it makes more sense to go for a commercial that allows it, a commercial zone.
It wouldn't be allowed
Why?
because it would be an illegal spot zone. It would create an island of C4 or 5 surrounded by no other C4 or C5.
But it's putting residential touching an area that is corridor designed as commercial.
But it's touching R3 now.
Right, so it's an extension of the R3
Yeah,
zone.
it's an extension.
It would be an illegal spot zone to change it to C4 or C5.
So it's acceptable for the R3 because there is R3
Correct.
next to it.
But it doesn't meet the minimum lot size.
It doesn't meet the minimum
So, I
lot
mean,
size, it doesn't meet the lot coverage, it doesn't meet
Okay,
the yard.
okay, hang on, Kevin.
So, looking at this, and forgive me, I wasn't here last week, are we considering this a whole separate lot or an extension of the lot that's already like, that it's extending from?
The lot remains unchanged.
It can't be split.
It can't be split.
Then,
This
I'm
does not
sorry,
create a split.
then I'm confused as far as the argument that the lot's not, or the square footage that you're talking about.
Because it's R3.
It creates a non-conforming situation relative, but non-conformities are recognized in the zoning code. And like I said, the applicant's willing.
So doesn't that cover the square footage that you're talking about?
The
When
setback.
you say no, not the setback, the minimum, you said 5,000 square feet. So doesn't the non-conforming
I guess.
characteristic cover that?
Possibly
It
could.
depends on your perspective.
Yeah.
To me, it does. Again,
Me too.
I point you to the criteria. Does that issue come into play in terms of compliance with the comprehensive plan? Does it come into play in whether or not the property is at least as well suited for the proposed zone as the existing zone? Does it come into play whether or not the rezone would present foreseen immitigable impacts of incompatible uses? And would it place undue burden on the delivery of public services?
I don't,
All right, Gabe.
So, and you may have said this earlier, Jill, so a lot is not impacted by the zoning code that it's in, right?
Not the zoning map.
Or the zoning map. Okay, so then, yeah, then I do agree. I think it depends on your interpretation of lot. If zoning map does not impact the definition of a lot,
It's not.
so.
Kathy.
Okay, I'm just reading from the minutes. There was a Michael Edwards that testified against
Yes.
this. And he just said there have been difficulty between him and the previous owner in regards to property lines, access fencing, and the building is built on the property line. Could you address that, please?
Yeah, there's no setbacks.
It's because there's no setback.
There's a clear fence like right there if you look at Google. Maps.
Yeah, the wrought iron fence. Yeah. But again, how does that come into play with the criteria?
I don't
So I would say,
I would, yeah, try not to pursue questions that don't relate directly to what the criteria are.
The scope of what we're looking at right now is it
It's a rezone proposal.
just the rezone, not.
Is that property at least as well suited or better suited for the proposed zone? Oh, again, what, I read the criteria.
so I would say in where I feel like my break is on, if in fact that's a valid sense, is that we are being asked to not just zone-wise split a lot, even though it's not splitting, I understand that, we're also being asked to split a building. And you're telling me by rules or planning and zoning Bible, that we cannot create an island by going into a C4 or a C5.
Well, there's a lot of case law on that, yeah.
There's a lot of case law. But for the comprehensive plan, R3 does not meet in that ground. It supports it, but it does not meet the comprehensive plan's goal with respect to that corridor remaining commercial entirely.
But again, that's a matter of perspective.
And that's
The
also the written word.
comprehensive plan says subject property, let's see, it's designated as neighborhood commercial. Where's that one section? Although the neighborhood commercial designation is primarily intended for commercial uses, apartments are listed as a supporting use for this designation. Page 62 of the plan states. And then it lists the residential should be considered based on these circumstances: location, access, and compatibility.
Okay, but again, half building, half lot. So then my question would be, why is not the entire thing changed over to residential so that it is a lot, the full lot goes into residential? Because offices are allowed in residential.
No.
No.
And on top of that, it doesn't sound like that's what the applicant wants to do,
I understand
because
that.
he owns that whole building.
Well, nobody splits a building unless it's a condo.
I guess my biggest problem is on this new thing right here. It says, commercial uses remain along street frontage. Residential uses are located above or behind commercial uses when present. So to me, that's a pretty major street frontage.
Well, technically, they're gonna say it's is it Vista? The cross street.
It's
Yep.
Vista.
It flanks Thane, but there's no access onto Thane.
I gotcha. Okay.
So there would still be two commercial street frontages for this.
Questions? Any additional questions for Joel, everyone? No?
I'm stuck on the yard size and the,
Oh, I mean, we can go through the,
Focus on the criteria.
yeah, we can go through the criteria, you know. It doesn't have to be unanimous.
No, I understand that. And before we move on to criteria, which means we close the public hearing, I want to give our applicant an opportunity to come to the podium since we're done beating on Joel. For now.
Using Joel's guidance is what I like to call
Is that
it.
what it is? I'm really feeling Joel's guidance pretty firmly right now.
He's steering us back to.
All right, and please your name and city of residence.
Chris Clark, City of Residence, Pullman, Washington.
Thank you.
So we keep talking about setback issues, and I know Joel said this. The setback issues for the building are what the setback issues are. When the gentleman came up here and carried on for, 10, 15 minutes about all the previous stuff, all previous to me owning the building, I don't know, everything he said could be true, it could all be fallacy. I could be reading nursery rhymes up here to you. That would be the relevance of that to me, because it doesn't affect this. When I went to my engineer about this, I did this because there's no need for this office space. There's an excess of office space in the valley. The highest and best use would be to add additional residential stuff. When we're getting caught up on setbacks, we're not asking to change any setbacks. We're not asking to change any lot lines. We're not asking to change tax parcel numbers. We're not asking to split tax parcel numbers. All we're asking you to do is to change the use of a part of the building. If this was to be approved and we went to before the city and the city said, hey, we can issue you a building permit, but you can't have back patios on this, I would be like, I don't care. Like, I don't even want a patio. Great, don't let me have anything. I'm only looking for the residential space inside the building. So the issues with what we're asking for here, and forgive me for this, but we keep going down tangents and rows of things that we're not asking for. We're asking to change the zoning of a portion of a building. It's certainly a supporting use. It puts no undue burden on city services. The reality of it is, if I tried to build that same exact building footprint on the lot today for a office commercial use, it would not be allowed. It does not have the number of parking spaces required to meet current zoning. What I'm asking for with the residential actually is a lower requirement for parking than what is currently there. I'm allowed to use the office building now, regardless of the parking spaces, because the building was built 25, 30 years, whatever ago it was. So we're not asking for that. This change in use would be a change downward from a zoning thing. We're asking for a downward use. The use is certainly compatible. It certainly doesn't put any undue burdens on it, and the current parking requirements are met. So I think that, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, but I'm trying to solve a problem that I have as the building owner that coincides with what the city's looking for here. We need more residential housing. We're not attracting builders, developers to come in and build large multifamily properties. We're not attracting, we cannot build, you obviously know I'm in real estate, we cannot build housing at less than $250, $300 a square foot. That is not affordable housing. I can't do that as a builder developer. I can't do that. The math doesn't work out. If we're worried about like what we're building, I've got examples of other stuff I've done, and I'm going to tell you some of the nicest rental unit stuff in Lewiston. We do all LVP flooring, granite countertops, tile baths, because we're trying to hit that higher end of the market. So to me, it's certainly a compatible use. What we're asking for is shade this a different color so that I can be allowed to do what we need at the city level. Do you guys have any questions for me? Because I'd be happy to answer them.
I just want to say, Mr. Clark, that whether we're down in the weeds and it's annoying you or not, this is a first experience, I think, for me, certainly. I don't know about anybody else on planning and zoning, where we are actually discussing a division of zones in an existing building. So if we get a little off track, we have Joel to make certain that we get back to it. I'm not opposed to what you're proposing. As it was made very clear in the meeting previously, we're going to see more and more of this. This is more and more happening. My thought is, if in fact it is more and more happening, then perhaps C3 is not the designation for that section of the corridor. If we have to develop properties, if we have to add residents to existing office buildings, my argument is it's commercial. It's intended to be commercial. This is indeed a supporting unit. And rather than consider pockets, perhaps it be considered a full-on zone change into something that allows exactly what you're asking for if we're going to see more and more of this. So respectfully, at least on my part, I'm not opposed to your proposal. I'm not opposed to the why behind what you're doing. I think it's very valid, and I agree. We're probably going to see more and more of this. But these little slivers makes me uncomfortable in a number of levels, but what I will also say is, as far as the individual who chose to come up here, who has an adjacent property and talk about situations that he faced, inequities that he faced, although they are not your responsibility, they are still the responsibility of planning and zoning to be respectful and understand that he feels his voice was lost back then, and I'm simply trying to make certain, and in my time here, that we don't do the same thing moving forward. Be respectful of everybody's purpose, requests, and voice. So the gentleman that chose to arrive here last time to complain, whether you felt it was valid or not, or whether it was nursery rhymes, it was still very important for us to hear, because what I'm hearing is opposition or questioning of these things were unheard or irrelevant at the time he was going through a rezone request or a build request or whatever. And that's something I would like not to repeat during my tenure on planning and zoning. But my primary concern is if in fact that corridor is meant to remain commercial, if in fact we are going to see more and more residents needing to go into business buildings, because I think the timeline of offices is less, as you say, there's not a demand, you can't fill the space. What you're proposing makes great sense. Residents, makes great sense to me. I'm not opposing that. I think we're a little lost, or as you say, in the weeds on things you're not asking for, because in our head, we're trying to think in down the road. And a commercial corridor, maybe the time for the zone review is not here, but you have opened kind of the gateways to that because of what you need to now request zone wise to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. I don't think anybody here is giving you crap for what it is you're trying to accomplish. I don't think any person here is struggling with that.
No, so just to be clear, like, I'm not saying that anybody here is giving me crap, and I'm certainly respectful of your position. I was on planning and zoning in Pullman for 7 years, so I get that. All due respect, I know all of you are volunteers. So I'm saying that my reference to the gentleman that showed up before, all of his past grievances, like I say, they have nothing to do with me, and they honestly have nothing to do with this property. If he could come up and say, this residential use is a hindrance to my business, then we should absolutely consider that. If it's like, see, if something in this use is going to impact his business, his property values, his whatever, absolutely those should be considered.
Very true.
But none of that was stated. And it's like, there was no argument, there was no opposition from him saying, I will be adversely affected, or that he was ever adversely affected by me, any of my actions, anything I proposed. So to me, that's why I'm saying it's like, great if you want to listen to him, but it's like, that doesn't, when I'm back to the basic of the thing, what is the criteria before us? You certainly have every ability to deny this application for this, but it's like, if I want to be clear that we're on these are the criterias. And if we're denying the application on the basis of these criteria, I'm good with that. I'm comfortable with that. As long as we're on the criterias. When it's like, when we start getting into the weeds of how this gentleman felt about what happened 25 years ago when the previous owner built the property, not one of our criteria.
No, and at the end of days, we are gonna discuss on criteria without question, but I am not gonna be dismissive of a resident voice.
I understand that.
And I say that because this planning commission has heard time and time and time again how everything is given to the requesters based on fundage or everybody's in bed together or whatever it is. And so I'm going to be respectful when we have a voice, whether it's pertinent to the criteria. And we can't address it on the criteria, but I'm not going to be dismissive about it in any kind of a public hearing. You will be judged on the criteria, and Joel is working his butt off to keep us on the criteria. But we have some questions, and that gives us as individuals and residents who own our own homes pause. And I'm just giving everybody the opportunity and the respect to let them voice those things. I think that's critical.
But
Don't disagree at all.
Okay,
Madam
great.
Chair, I think what he's saying though is residents' opposition to his own change or something else can be part of the relevant criterion standards if it's incompatible use.
I understand that, and I fully understood what he was referencing. Thank you. because I didn't come in here and taking any of this lightly. Now, do we have any additional questions for Mr. Clark? We don't. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Okay, now, do we have any write-ins? We do have write-ins, so this would be the opportunity in time, or do we? Okay, so pertinent to this public hearing regarding this zone request change for 132 Thane, I believe. Is there anyone present that wants to come forward and address it in favor or opposed? No? Thank you. All right, Dawn, the write-ins.
This is from Noah Prescott. I hope this is the right place to send this. I am in support of ZNC 24-4, performing the zone change from a C3 commercial to an R3 residential. It frustrated me that the Planning and Zoning Commission empathetically approved a residential to commercial rezone early in the meeting on 9/25/2024, but then began to bike shedding small issues when this proposal originally came up. This kind of development is exactly the slippery slope we need in order to make Lewiston a sustainable city. As a developer, Chris said in the original meeting, mixed-use development is all around us, but it should be in a lot more locations. His new proposal exactly in the spirit of what the new Project 2044 zoning code is supposed to be, and I'm glad someone has begun to take the first step. Many of the housing developments the commission has approved lately has been large-scale housing with multiple bedrooms, but what we really need in this valley are small homes and apartments for young people without kids or older people who don't need more than a bedroom or two. These proposed apartments seem to be just that, and rejecting this proposal flies in the face of the new zoning regulations that we just approved. Please approve this change so that Lewiston can make a positive step forward into the future.
Any others? That was it? Okay, thank you. So barring no additional public feedback, no additional questions from commission, this is your last opportunity for Joel or for Mr. Clark. I'm going to go ahead and close this public hearing. Yes? You want a rebuttal to somebody really in your corner? Yeah, no? Okay, all right. No, I appreciate it, Dawn. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone. Time to play. Okay. Let me see if I can find my 20,000 different pieces of paperwork. Here we go. 24-4, zone rezone request. Okay. And thank you, Kevin, for again the reminder. I didn't ever think we were gonna probably get unanimous. So our first relevant criteria and standard. The proposed rezone is or is not in general conformance with the Lewiston Comprehensive Plan. Applicable commentary, of course, will always be welcome, and detailed commentary, of course, is mandatory. I'm going to start with Emily. Emily, what's your thoughts?
Trying to find the page with the comprehensive plan, but I feel like it is in conformance with the comprehensive plan since housing
Page 58.
and housing diversification. We're missing housing typologies, and that would be in conformance with that area to bridge the gap.
Okay,
But I'm trying to find, feel free to move on.
all right,
That's my initial thought.
all right.
Madam Chair. So the comprehensive plan in the staff report is addressed on page 2, where it talks about apartments being listed as a supporting use within the neighborhood commercial
That's-
future land use map designation. And then it lists circumstances under which the residential should be considered appropriate or not. The first one is location. And the criteria there is that commercial uses remain along the street frontage. In this case, it would remain on 2 street frontages. Then it says residential uses are located above or behind the commercial use. That one would not be it. So it meets the first sentence, but not the second one. The second category is intensity. Does it provide a transition in intensity from the adjacent uses and zones and provide an appropriate transition in building use type and scale? The next consideration for residential use in this designation is access. It's got to be, or supposed to be located on a collector or an arterial roadway with adequate access for the proposed use.
Mhm.
It is located on an arterial, it does have adequate access. And then there's one more consideration. Compatibility. Well, the presence of the residential would not possibly hinder future commercial use on adjacent commercial properties.
Fair, thank you. Shay, thoughts?
It's not in compliance with the comprehensive plan, solely based on the fact. That it talks here about. Whether or not it's above or behind, and it's to the side of. And I think too, in looking at. Providing housing choices throughout Lewiston. Thing talks about housing, health and well-being considerations. And that. Residents near hazards, which I wouldn't say Thane is a hazard, but poor environmental conditions is something that we kind of need to look at. And Thane is a very busy road. Traffic. And
Access. on
Yeah,
campus.
unfortunately, even though it's adjacent or abutting
Yeah,
Thane,
there's no-
because it doesn't open onto Thane, that is,
so.
but I
going back-
appreciate it.
Back to my original, it's solely based off the fact that it's not.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Kevin.
I'm gonna have to say that it does comply. I'll just note goal LU2 providing provide housing choices throughout Lewiston. Provide, diversify possible housing options, yada, yada, like that, so.
Thank you. Gabe,
I'm gonna say it does in terms of LU 2.11. I know we have talked a little bit about slippery slopes in a good way, to some at least, in terms of diversifying housing options, looking at unique ways. And for me, that as part of LU 2.11, it's also conducting a review of the land use code, and that to me entails looking at policies and rules that actually contradict some of the things about providing housing choices. Sometimes there are contradictions in the code about what you can and can't do. And so in my mind, the providing housing choices throughout Lewiston do make it in conformance with the comprehensive plan, because I do think we're gonna encounter this more and more. And I think we're gonna have to be a little bit, maybe do a little bit of trickeration in how we look at that. And that's my word, by the way.
can you spell that for Dawn?
Trickeration.
Yeah. Kathy,
Well, I've been thinking, and I understand why we need to change it to R3, because if it stays commercial, you can't build on the side. You can't have residents on the side. So I get that, and I do get the fact that we need more housing, residential in Lewiston. So I guess it is in conformance if we change the code to R3. I would really like Cindy's idea that if we could have a commercial A or something like that, that could address that you could have apartments not only above and below, but also to the side.
no, Cindy's idea was rezone a commercial that actually allows for that.
Yes, that's what
Anyway,
that's what I'm
there we
saying.
go. Mo,
I go back and forth on this one. ED 2.3 speaks very much to the fact that, improve housing affordability. But then in listening to the applicant talking about doing higher end stuff, it doesn't meet that portion of it, but it does meet the ED 2.3.2 of, variety of housing types and, re-envisioning underutilized retail spaces in 84.3.
Numbers that you're referencing.
They're right here.
In your staff report on page 3,
Oh, I'm on a different page.
There you go.
in talking about, under the LU2 to provide housing choices throughout Lewiston. And diversifying housing option.
I thought you were saying 82 instead of the
No.
LU.
I was hearing that too.
ED,
Oh.
erectile dysfunction.
You know,
Children.
I was not gonna say that out loud.
Okay, so you're on the fence, is or is not, but if you had to lean one way.
Let me look at the exact wording again.
I think the key hangup's gonna be general conformance.
Yeah. For me, it is not in general. conformance.
So we have tracking, right? So I'm struggling with it, not because I object to the applicant's request, not because I object to the need to make it R3. I believe if we're gonna see this, then C3 needs to be revisited in its entirety across the boards, no islands, but revisited, or a C3A. Because if we're gonna have supporting use, which is apartments are a supporting use, then apartments should be allowed in the space of a C3, and it's not. So we have a bigger issue of zone definitions, but that is not our applicant's problem. Right now, he is trying to meet the zone requirements that do allow what he's asking. And so in general conformance, in general conformance, I would say yes. In very specific conformances, not necessarily. In general conformance, yes. Thank you. Subject property is or is not at least as well suited or better suited for the proposed zoning district than the existing zoning district. Discuss amongst. Mo, is or isn't better suited or at least as equally suited?
I will have to say is because I think it's at least, I would not say better suited, but I would say it is at least as well suited.
Okay, thank you, Kath.
I agree with Mo, and actually the parking requirement becomes better
It
suited.
is.
I think as long as the residents are happy, they're happy. Gabe?
Kathy kind of stole my thunder. I was gonna go with the parking requirements, so I agree with Kathy and Mo.
I'm gonna say yes.
Okay. Shay?
Yeah.
Of course, Emily, you don't have to respond.
I'll say that it is at least, or maybe not better, but at least as well suited. And the fact that it abuts up to a existing R3 zone and makes the parking better.
So I'm actually gonna go is not as well suited as it is currently zoned. And I say that for a variety of reasons, but yay parking. So we don't have, Shay, do you wanna bounce in there or you just wanna stay quiet?
Well, I'm gonna have to say is not. I'm just looking back to the comprehensive plan and looking at other things it talks about having things that provide transition.
Mhm.
So I guess my issue is like we're going from commercial to residential to commercial. So the transition is not smooth. So that's why I would say it is not.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the details. Proposed rezone does or does not present foreseen unmitigable impacts of incompatible uses or development being located in the same vicinity.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Where did you guys land overall with regard to number 2?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jim, sorry. Yeah.
The A's outweighed the nays. Okay. Proposed rezone does or does not present, don't make me say mitigable again.
Mitigable.
Yeah. So, M,
I wasn't expecting you to call on me, so
Well,
I'm not.
get with it. Top, top, Emily? We'll come back to, or we'll come back, Shay, we'll come back to Emily.
The proposed rezone does present for foreseen medical impacts, of incompatible uses or development.
And what would you say those are?
Kind of back to what I said earlier, just the transition piece of it.
Okay, thank you. Here, Kevin.
I'm gonna say it does not, because it's an extension of the R residential, so.
Gabe?
I'm gonna agree with Kevin. And I'll again go a step further and say, if this is a slippery slope and we start seeing more of these, that's gonna be part of that.
All right, you've lost me. What's gonna be part of what?
So when people start requesting rezones on their properties, they're looking at different ways to utilize their properties. I guess that statement was just in general, that this is going to become, if it's a zone change for splitting a property, that this question is gonna be, it's gonna kind of come down to your definition of uses or what a lot is. So I'm in favor of it. And generally I'm in favor of it because it is an extension of the R3 zone.
Okay, Kathy?
And it does abut apartments to the south, so it's more like a peninsula, I guess, rather than an island.
Well.
Really flag lot in traditional sense
No.
because of access.
Yeah.
I have a tendency to side with Shay and just the fact that it's doing that. Commercial, residential, commercial, all within that same space. And
I understand. So my thought is, we keep revisiting this. We can't create islands, but apparently peninsulas are a go. And my thought, Bryden, as you brought out, the city made a swath, and that's why there's so many split zones. This is not a swath. This follows, if you look at the commercial lines, this follows commercial. And what we are doing, even though it abuts, that apartment building does not have people coming out that side, it's on the other side. So technically, yes, it abuts R3. It is not an extension of R3 in my opinion, but when this or if this passes, it will be. Technically, so I don't like the peninsula. I don't like reversing commercial to residential. Because it is reversing the comprehensive plan determination of what that is. Perhaps we just zoned C3 incorrectly. So I say it does present foreseen mitigable impacts and of incompatible uses only because it's setting a precedence in a highly commercial district where in fact we should just rezone the whole thing. But I think the yays have it. Emily.
I'm gonna say does not,
Okay.
and agree with Kevin and Gabe,
Okay, thank you.
and
And Kathy.
And Kathy.
Thank you.
And then there was also mention in there that subdivision was not allowed, so in this thing, just with it being close to the R3 or abutting next to it, I understand what you mean by wanting different zones, but it's outside of our scope, so that's what I have to keep on telling myself.
Okay.
Emily, you took my words down, and you actually made it good, because that's what I was trying to get to.
You made sense of Gabe.
Yeah.
All right. The effects of the proposed rezone are or are not anticipated to place undue burden upon the delivery services provided by any political subdivisions within the planning jurisdiction, including school districts, et cetera. And I'm just gonna lead off and say, no undue burden. Do I have a disagreement?
No.
All right, that was,
You agreed on mine.
It was unanimous.
look at us go. The size, type, and intensity and density of development expected to occur on the subject property as a result of this rezoning is or is not suitable for the area and will or will not unduly burden the neighborhood, public infrastructural or environmental resources. All right, it's a freebie. Somebody give me thoughts. Kevin?
So I'm gonna say that it is suitable and will not unduly burden the neighborhood. For the same reasons that I said earlier, as far as it's just an extension of the residential. It's not like a completely new construction or anything like that. It's a remodel of existing, so that's my reason.
Okay, I love it. Anybody else?
I will agree with Kevin
Mhm.
and add goal H.1 and H.2 with the diversify housing options and communication about missing housing types. This seems like that goes in with those goals in the comprehensive plan that we should be looking at more of these.
Mhm.
And I think that Thane and Bryden are two of the big areas where we could be seeing some of these missing housing types.
So bouncing off of that, I agree. But if we're gonna put a swath of commercial down an area that used to be residential, we were actually in fact reversing previous zone changes, identifying commercial as commercial. And as we move forward, if this is the precedent and we continuously take these little slivers along those corridors, then it's miszoned already. All right, but it's not adding any additional undue burden. It's just reversing what apparently we've worked really hard for and taken away residential homes for it.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
My only concern that I would like noted in there is my concern is that Vista is a one-way in
True.
that section. I don't think there is any definitive way to say that traffic for a commercial or a residential is going to create a higher burden. You know, because obviously there's gonna be traffic into that parking lot either way. But I do have concerns because I've gone to that building extensively. One of the fellows who actually is in that building is one of my fellow Rotarians, so I have to visit him frequently. And I cannot begin to tell you the number of people that I see cut through the gas station parking lot and shoot across there rather than going all the way around the long way to go in.
so respectfully, our gas station property owner didn't show up to this meeting, did he?
No, no.
Mhm.
No, I just, it's not, that's not an issue of him being upset about his property being cut through. It is more of a concern about traffic and accident potential
I support that.
because people are doing inappropriate driving behaviors.
So I think what we're gonna have is we're gonna have business suites leaving and residents coming back if we go by the standard 85. So I don't think it's gonna add any additional.
Hopefully
traffic.
not.
But that's me. That's what we're all here for, is opinions. Okay, kids, did you pull, I think, most, we had more will nots than we had wills, or will not create undue occur, right?
Is suitable
Is
for
and
the
will.
area.
Suitable.
and Will not
Thank
unduly
you,
burden.
thank you. All right, boy, these are fun. I love the way they're worded. So, based on what I'm seeing, I am open to a motion to approve the rezone as written, 24-4 by Mr. Clerk.
Drafting a reason statement.
Have a
Yeah, that.
quick question.
Okay,
For number one, was it is or is not in conformance?
there were more ises than is gone.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't say mine for the last one.
Oh, yeah, knock yourself out.
So I'd say it is not stated, but I
Is not,
only two those permits, I don't think that'll.
is not suitable. And will,
Will not. unduly burden.
okay, thank you. Okay, so just for clarity, it is not suitable but will not, is that what I'm hearing from you, or is suitable and will not?
Is not suitable.
All right, so you're splitting the question. Okay. Again, I still think that the yays have it. unless my calculations are wrong.
They're not.
Okay. I'm open to a motion to, direct the staff to draft a reason statement in approval. Thank you. Of Mr. Clark's application to rezone a portion of 132 Thane into R3. Second? Thank you. We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor of approving?
Aye.
All opposed? Shay? Oh, you talk. What'd you do? Okay, thank you. All right, so it passes. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Okay, now we've made these poor people sit here a really, really long time. Let's get to their business. How's that sound? Thank you for tolerating us. Okay. Okay, so our next plan of action here today, all right, is a public hearing regarding reason statement for variance application VAR 24-2 by DK Holdings. We are going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Staff will give a presentation, then we will ask the applicant to provide testimony or a presentation. We will accept testimony from the public. Applicant will have an opportunity to rebut, and then we will close that public hearing and go through this great little exercise you all just watched a second ago. Barring that, let's open this, nope, 8, what?
Me and Don are playing,
You guys are killing
we're
me.
playing cursor fights.
Stop touching things.
Yeah.
Good?
Hands off the
All right,
mouse.
here we go. Variance 24, what was it? That, okay. Joel, please.
Variance holder go.
South folder, your man.
No, it's a separate one. Here it is. Okay, so let's start with the site fix. So this is the southwest corner of the subject property looking northeast. Make me close everyone individually. Not gonna let me rotate through. That's gonna be a pain. Oh, wait there, scroll. There we go. This one is looking east from 18th Street across the southern end of the subject property, which is on the left over here. You can see the new curb gutter and sidewalk is installed in the subdivision. Is looking at one of the houses across the street. Other house across the street. This is looking north on 18th Street. Up the west property line of the subject property. This is a house that's currently under construction on the subject property. This is looking north across the subject property down the middle of it from east to west, looking north. That's Canyon Crest. Homes built in the background there. This is an interior roadway throughout the subdivision, so these are all gonna be lots with the small scale development homes on them. This is looking north up one of the new streets toward the east side of the property. Looking at the very east side of the property, which is in the foreground here, and these houses are on the adjoining property owner, adjoining property to the east of the subject property. Looking west down an interior street built within the subdivision. This is the house under construction on the subject property that you saw earlier. Let's see here. This is looking south again I'm lost now. South.
Interior street.
Okay, thank you for that help. Again, looking south at Canyon Crest. This is across the street, the neighboring property across 18th Street. It's undeveloped. And that house that's currently under construction. This one is not subject, it's on a lot that's not subject to the small development standards. So that's why you see the garage that's being built there now, sticking out from the house. That's basically the nature of the request for the variance here. And this is looking south on 18th Street, subject property is off to the west, and neighboring property on the west side of 18th Street is undeveloped. Okay, let's see here, get out of that one. Let's look at GIS photography, aerial photography. The north is up on this. This is the GIS aerial photograph with the zoning layer turned on, subject properties in the middle here. Kind of blue colors indicating the R3 zone, that is the zone of the subject property. Zoning properties to the east and the south are R1. To the north is PUD, it's Canyon Crest Plan Unit Development. You got R2 to the west, R2A to the southwest, and additional R1 to the northwest, it looks like. This is the same thing with the zoning layer turned on. So this is the subject property here. Surrounding uses undeveloped to the west, single family residential, all the way around otherwise. This is the GIS with the topography contours turned on. Indicating general slope of the property from southeast to northwest at 2.11%. This is a copy of the subdivision plat that's applicable to the property. I believe it's 53 lots. Not all of them are going to be developed subject to the small lot development standards, which is the subject of the variance application, but this just kind of gives you an idea of the overall layout of how it will be built out. So this is 18th Street. I'm sorry, that's Airway Avenue here, running east-west. 18th Street is on the west side up here. And then you can see the two interior roadways that will be constructed. And these are the phasing indications there. This line, which I failed to point out on the site pics, is actually, in addition to being a property line common between all these lots, there's a retaining wall about 4 feet tall built right here. So this is a flat pad on the south side of that wall, and everything to the north of it is a separate flat pad 4 feet down from this one. Got one more. Wait, no, that's the wrong one. Site plan in here somewhere. It doesn't want to close. Goes. Here it is. Nope, wrong one again. There it is. So this is the applicant's proposed site plan for the variance. The standard that he's asked being waived for all of the lots in the subdivision that will be built under the small lot development standards. I believe was 49 of the 53 lots, something like that. We'll see if that is a staff report.
That's the subdivision,
Thank you.
page 94.
Okay, so the standard for small lot development is that the garage be recessed from the habitable space of the home. In this case, the applicant proposes to do the opposite and project the garages out in front of the habitable space of the home. So this is the site plan that depicts that condition that he proposes to build if the variance is approved. I'm gonna skip through all the code references. They're attached to the staff report. I'm also gonna skip through the comprehensive plan section of the staff report. I did include some parts of the comprehensive plan. However, compliance with the comprehensive plan is not a criteria for a variance application, so I'm not gonna spend any time on that. We do have, let's see here, let's talk about. About the request in detail. So the code section in question here is except on a flag lot for a home with an attached garage, the garage wall with the garage door shall be recessed at least 4 feet from the adjoining habitable space wall of the home. That's the code section that he's asking that you waive. Or I wanted to go to. That's one of the many design standards for small lot development. Those standards were put in place to ensure an appealing built environment. They're intended as mitigation for the allowance of lots as small as 4,000 square feet for a single family home or 6,500 square feet for a duplex, and for the reduced, as mitigation for the reduced setbacks allowed in small or zero lot line development. So instead of having the garages be recessed 4 feet from the habitable space, he plans or wants to have them project 24 feet in front of the homes. So that's a differential of 28 feet from what the standard is. The requirement to recess the attached garages in these types of development from the homes is to prevent garage fronts from dominating the street. You've got photographs in your packets that the applicant submitted of developments that are examples of the type of what it would look like. I think I've got some too. So this is an example of a house that was built that meets our small lot development standards. This is a few more of them. Sorry, it's dark and it's hard to see. These are ones that are built in another part of town that do meet the standards. That's another one. And these are what ones look like that don't meet the standards. These were built prior to the current standards. That's what the old ones look like.
So go down to that bottom picture again. Now, will this be more like what this looks like, or will the garages be further apart?
Well, we can go back to the site plan. It's gonna be quite similar. Well,
Submitted photos.
I don't have those up here. So yeah, there will be a greater separation on what the applicant is proposing. But they do have them in their packets.
Like page 89, cap.
So these are considered duplexes, correct?
They're not duplexes technically because they have a property line running through the building down a common wall. So that's what makes it different from a duplex. A duplex is 2 dwelling units attached to each other on one lot.
Oh, okay.
This is each dwelling unit on its own lot with the property line running through the common wall.
So like a townhome.
Yeah.
Or the condos on Magnolia. et cetera.
Yeah, I was gonna say up on Magnolia, Juniper and up to the.
So back to the staff report, I'm sure you read the application. It's stated in the application that the need for the variance is due to the topography of the property. Applicant states that there is a significant cross slope that would create safety hazards for both vehicles and pedestrians between units. On my evaluation of the property is flat, 2.1%. Already talked about the 4-foot retaining wall separating the north from the south pads. One other section of the report. We did get some comments from the engineering division of our Public Works Department. They say the engineering division of Public Works submits the following. The current plan shows driveways at adjacent properties without the required separation per city standard 2-1. This exception from the standard will be allowed by engineering. All remaining driveway standards apply. Site development finished grade contours show a 2% average cross slope east to west. The individual lots are approximately 55 feet wide and 110 feet across, 110 feet wide for 2 lots. This results in approximately a 2-foot change in elevation across 2 lots from east to west. Not able to identify any particular safety hazard that would be created from a 2% driveway cross slope. So this is unlike a conditional use permit. You don't see very many variance applications. So just keep in mind that unlike a use permit, you've got to find all the criteria to be met, not just most of them. Conclude my staff presentation.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
On the retaining wall, and you said that you didn't think it was necessary. Is that what you said?
No.
No, you didn't say that.
No,
So Joel, as I understand it, in those, and we're way out, but we have rows. So facing, I guess it'd be north to south. The rows of housing essentially, yeah, if you could pull back up the plat.
yeah.
Okay. All right, so right
Keep
on.
in mind, yeah, okay, so just to reorient, north is up on this.
Right.
Yep.
So our slope that we're discussing, we have hang on, we have retaining walls between the first row and second row, or the first and second rows to the third row. Where are the retaining walls that we're talking about? That's a 4-foot.
There's one right,
That's that one there. Okay.
yeah,
So behind the first row of houses.
yeah.
Okay, and you're saying that the slope that we're dealing with is predominantly east to west with a 2-foot difference.
The 2-foot that was referenced by engineering had to do with across 2 lots.
2 lots, okay, so.
But the overall property slope is 2.1%.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So, Maureen, you had a question?
I'm just trying to visualize, because did you say the slope is going basically at a diagonal?
Across the building.
Well, you can hardly, it's hard to see here, but
Yeah.
in the grade,
Topography in the background.
yeah, you can see the topographic contours are dashed here.
Yeah.
That's what these lines are running this. So they're run like this across the property diagonally.
So my
Yeah.
So my understanding, we need the variance because of the slope of the topography of the property.
That's what the application says.
Just want to get that. clear.
Okay, so if we're talking about a slope, is the goal to make each unit follow obviously, rather than excavation, we're actually just talking about
I'm gonna let the applicant address that.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions for Joel, everyone? No? Okay, thank you, Joel. I'm sure you'll be back. Okay, so this is an opportunity or a time for the applicant. Yep, bring it on up and present your name and your city of residence.
I'm Dan Young, City of Lewiston. I just want to start by saying that last thing that you guys did was really impressive, the way you talked that whole thing through. I've been to lots of these meetings and that was actually pretty cool, so kudos.
It never feels cool.
Okay, so the plat map is up, so I'm just gonna start with it and I'm gonna try to zoom in a little bit. Okay, so the retaining wall is right here and we stacked two 2-foot blocks and the first foot is buried. So that wall is 3 feet tall. Okay, so if we start up here at the southeast corner, you can pick up a couple of these, the contours kind of hide inside. So we're looking at these dotted lines that are running diagonally. So we've got this first contour line that starts right there. And then as we start heading this direction, we can kind of see these contours. So there's one and there's one and there's one. So as we go down the way, so just reading the staff report, it says the subject property is flat. So I don't want to argue, but that's not flat. So this lot by itself, there's a contour line that starts right here. So I'm going to look at this piece of property.
Okay.
So there's a contour line right there. And then as we travel back here to that contour line, there's 4 feet of slope in that one lot. So when we have a long house that we're building, these are 2 townhomes like you guys were talking about with the duplexes connected together. When they're that long, you have to transition that slope somehow. And so in the current and the proposed that's in your guys' packet, when the garages are together like that, and you have to absorb 4 feet of slope, that driveway cross slope doesn't seem like much. But when the driveways are 24 feet wide and 24 feet wide, you've got 48 feet with cross slope in the driveway. So you have 48 feet of concrete with a driveway that has to absorb the grade. So the perfect example, and I didn't do this on purpose, is that ramp right there. And I would have to do the driveways on different contours. So this guy, if he's higher, his driveway is going to be up here and this guy's driveway is going to be there. And it creates a weird transition between those driveways where we have to put some kind of a guardrail in there where you trip and fall off of that. If somebody doesn't drive well, then your tire slips off the side of that. And that's what, that's why I don't want the garages together. And I'm asking for the variance. The other thing, as I'm going through this, at the very end, it says, you guys have to go relevant criteria and standards. Condition number 3, the variance will not, that's not it, sorry.
Who is not results of your own actions?
That's the one that I guess I'd like to start with. What you're looking at is an approved plat. That approved plat came through the Planning and Zoning Commission. It went through all the public hearings. It went to City Council and got approved, stamped, and that is an approved plat. And you saw that we put the streets in. We've actually started the first unit in there. So what did the garage house layouts look like? Those, the rectangles, that is the actual units that we planned to build when we submitted the plat. So we have an approved plat with the layout that we wanted. So we went to go build the first unit and we were denied because our garage layouts didn't meet compliance with the small lot subdivision. So I can comfortably say that I did not create that condition. I have an approved plat and I went to go build it and I can't. Now, looking at the logistics, if I'm going to follow the code compliance and this street, I didn't create the street grades. Airway Avenue was in, 18th Street was in, and we had to build between those. Now, going to build with those street contours that are already existing, we tried to help the grade heading north-south. That's why we put this wall in right here, is to separate some of that grade. So these units wouldn't be way higher and all this downhill slope at these houses. So we put the wall in, but I can't get away from the cross slope. So as we head here and we go across, and the reason that I know the slope on this one is because I went out and shot it. And it's hard to see when you look at it in the picture. It's like, oh, that looks relatively flat. But when you go stick the transit on it, there's 4 feet of cross slope in that lot that I have to absorb somehow, some way. So I might need some help here, Don. Can I go back to the picture with the proposed and current, please? Okay, so that's the one that we were just looking at. That's the proposed. That's the way I submitted it. That's the way the plat was approved. If you go back to the current. It's in the same thing. I think it's in
Just
the,
above it. Scroll up.
you go.
Okay.
Stuck.
So that's the one in your packet that's labeled number 9 attached to the application.
Yep, that's current.
Yeah, okay, so if everybody's looking at that one, we can't get it up on the screen. Okay, so by right in the R3 zone, the front of the house has to protrude past the front of the garage. When the garage is behind the front of the house like that, the house can actually be pushed forward. So on that, I believed I showed 13 feet on the current plan. You see the number that says 13, it'd be near the bottom, and that's from the front of the house to the street. That makes sense?
Yeah, it's 13.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're, again, current is approved by the city. I can go build that. The front of the house would only be 13 feet away from the sidewalk. And I've got those 2 garage problems, and I put the picture on there with the 4 cars. So if you're across the street, would you rather have 4 cars jammed together in a driveway and a house 13 feet from the sidewalk? Or would you rather have 2 larger garages with more space in between them? And the garages are big enough that you can park cars inside of. That's why I want the 24 feet. So I made a 24-foot deep garage and a 24-foot wide garage in the hopes that people will park their cars inside of them. Because some garages are so stinking small, you know, they're 20 by 20, you can't even get a car inside of it. So we've got a design for bigger garages. So people are not going to hopefully park in the driveway. People still will, but they'll have the opportunity to park inside the garage. We created the separation between the units. Now I can slope the yard instead of having slope in the driveway to absorb that cross slope in between them. And that's why I'm asking for the variance. Check my notes real quick. I think that's kind of the long and short of it.
So questions for our applicant? Yes, Kevin?
So maybe this is irrelevant, but there was reference to 38 properties already under construction or built? No?
No, we have one house that's,
Okay, that's where I needed that clarification. And so what you're saying is that on the plat where it shows all of the houses with garages out front, that was approved through here, city council and all that stuff.
I submitted for permit.
Sorry, Joel.
Oh, okay, Joel. Yeah.
So just so that the commission is aware, subdivision plats don't improve building footprints.
No,
Most of our subdivision plats don't even show building footprints. We don't review, so those are not site plans for any kind of building permits. Also, on those footprints, it did not identify the protruding part as a garage. I mean, that could have been living space for all anybody knew. It also says on the plat as a note, all lots will be developed according to the small lot development standards. And that's on the plat.
thank you for that clarification, but my question goes to, because at what point were you told that you couldn't do what you want to do?
I submitted the first building permit.
Okay, that's where the clarification that I wanted. Okay.
And that's when the building standards.
Nope, that's it.
Nope.
That's what I wanted.
Yeah, that's when they get applied.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. Additional questions? Probably draw you back here. Thank you. Okay, the next bit of business is testimony from the public on this variance request. Do I have any persons present who have comments in favor or against? Do you know? Dawn, do we have any write-ins? We do not. Okay, so at this particular juncture, there's no testimony either way, and that means the applicant does not have to rebut anything. So this is our last opportunity for questions for Joel or questions for our applicant
Or engineering.
or engineering.
So I do have a question. One of our things that we have to decide that if this is the minimum variance necessary to do this, and I don't know who I asked that. Oh,
You go, take it, Joel.
What's the question?
the minimum variance necessary. I want to make sure that that is the minimum.
Well, that's for you guys to decide. Like I said, this is 28 feet discrepancy between what the code requires and what he wants to build. Instead of building 4 feet back, he wants to go 24 feet forward. Is that the minimum necessary to alleviate the claimed hardship of a 2% cross slope?
That'd be a question for the, that'd be
Maybe
a
the
question for
engineer.
or the engineer, one or the other. Cause
Yeah.
I don't have any information right now to make that assessment.
can't
I
make
agree
that
with,
decision.
I'm not an engineer, so I can't, I
Yeah,
can't.
I'm here.
Yeah, well, bring them on up.
Yeah.
Pat Severance with the engineering department.
So I think what Kathy and I are wondering is, one of the conditions that we have to consider with the criteria is whether this is the minimum variance to alleviate the problem. So are there alternatives to this? Is this actually a minimum in your opinion?
But I think the applicant proposed one alternative, and from the reasoning set forth, I don't know how he came to that alternative being the proposed one, why the garages with this 2% cross slope causes them to come together now versus being separated. I don't understand how you tackle that problem by bringing the garages together. To give you an idea of a 2% cross slope, that's an ADA compliant sidewalk as far as flat. So there's not many 2% cross slope lots in Lewiston.
So the driveway itself will be 2%.
If it was the follow the lay of the land,
One way to mitigate any of the slope would be excavate each double.
that's typically, so you go out and you flatten the site for your foundation.
Okay.
So you're gonna have a flat spot in the middle and then transitions at the edges. If you were to flatten out the whole area for the foundation. And you transition 2 feet on one side as a cut and 2 feet fill as a fill on the other side of the lot.
Mo.
So it's getting into a number thing for me. In looking at page 2 of the report, from the staff report, it's saying that the individual lots are 55 feet wide, 110 feet wide for 2 lots. It results in approximately a 2-foot change of elevation across 2 lots.
2% cross slope. He was going diagonal to get the 4 feet.
Okay. Okay.
Different.
It's longer distance.
So 2 foot side to side, 4 foot diagonal,
Yeah.
10, 4. Okay, I'm drawing triangles in my head now.
And these are just approximates. I mean,
A squared plus
every
B squared.
lot's gonna be a little different, so.
So I also, sorry, I'm gonna take up. So I saw that the request is basically to apply this to 38 out of the 53 lots. And I guess I'm having a hard time understanding that if the top section was leveled and then that 4-foot retaining wall was put in, and that creates a level bottom half, then why are we needing to apply this to 38 out of 53, and what separates the other 15?
I can't address the first part, but the second part is the remaining lots are not subject to the small lot development standards. They meet
Okay.
the regular lot standards of the R3 zone, so they're not gonna be done as small lots.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So the entire new addition encompasses both individual family homes and 38 in a small lot central
Townhome style.
space, yeah. Okay. So it's specifically to those that meet the small lot standard
Right.
only.
Right.
And what our applicant, as I understand it, is proposing is a larger garage, but the garage protrudes in front of the house, whereas the standard, which when was the small lot standard developed and put into place, Joel? Do you know the?
Well, we've had them for quite a long time, but they were recently changed. They were changed.
2021?
Sounds right. Here it is. Yeah, 2021.
So the small lot standards that allowed for garages in front, such as the ones along, is it Warner? It's not Warner, whatever it is about.
Juniper,
Huh?
Juniper and Warner in that area.
Yeah,
Okay, and those are,
Stewart.
yeah, those are older. Is the home protruding in front, so that particular one, was that always part of those, or was that part of the 2021 revision?
2021 revision.
Okay. Kevin,
So, Pat, just to clarify from my brain, so before you talked about, it sounded to me like you were reversed because the current one is the driveways are together and the proposed are separated. I thought you kind of flipped those, but
Well,
maybe I'm
let's
wrong.
get our terminology. So the one that the applicant's applying for is to have them separated with the garages sticking out. What he proposes to do if has to follow, if his variance isn't applied, what he proposes to do is bring the driveways together.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so the question was brought forth, does that create a safety hazard? And is this the minimum needed variance in order to accommodate this? I don't understand why you'd bring the driveways together if that's gonna cause a problem. Why don't you leave them still separated? There's a lot of different house plans that you can look at other than just one. I don't know, he probably went through several, I don't know.
That goes to my next question is that, were there any other proposals thrown out there, discussed with the applicant or?
solutions?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like one right there, keeping them separate, just the design is not as different as, you know what I mean? So, yeah,
No, I hadn't.
okay, then you've answered my question, thank you very much.
Additional questions for Pat or Joel?
Excuse me, I guess if you do have the garages separate, it's still, you're gonna have them protruding and the original. For the variance, don't you have to have them inset?
This is part of the variance.
Yeah, that's part of the variance.
Driveways. Well, I was speaking specifically to the driveways.
Mhm.
Being,
But the proposed layout is the one that was originally presented, even though, without specs and zone.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it could have been the garage was inset and the house was poking out.
That's
Basically.
yeah, and that's the standard
Mhm.
as
Right.
defined since 2021.
Right.
Is that the garages were not the predominant feature of any structure built. And again, we have prime examples across Lewiston of the garage being the first thing.
Can I rebut any of that?
Yeah, you're gonna get your opportunity. So we're just gonna peck at these guys until everybody's exhausted and then you get to come on back up. So,
Well, I have,
That's fine, Kathy.
question for him.
okay.
Because I'm looking at this original house footprint and I'm sure there's a reason why they do this, but we have two garages right next to each other.
Mhm.
And if you flipped one of the houses, if you had them both facing the same way, then you'd have one garage there and one garage on the other end. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're talking about but that also. That wasn't, yeah. So you're thinking, so they're all facing the same direction, all the driveways
Yeah,
are
but
separate.
they'd still be separated if you flipped one of the house footprints, then the garages wouldn't be, I can see, you're gonna have this 4-car garage right there with, with that original thing, which isn't maybe that pleasant to look at either, but if you flipped one of the house footprints over, then you'd have, the garages would be separated. And it would look
Yeah, but then the foundation, I'm gonna just probably
Well, yeah.
guess that the construction wise, and
But I
that's
think
not,
that he can address that.
yeah, that's not our call to redesign his plan necessarily.
Well, if there's other ways to meet the minimum
Yes.
Yeah.
variance or meet the minimum requirement without doing the variance, I think that that's something that we should look at.
I agree. I wasn't disrespecting that. Okay, are we comfortable with any questions we posed for city staff? Thank you, Pat, and thank you, Joel. Okay, yes, we get to rebut. Back again, state your name, city
Dan
resident.
Young, City of Lewiston. Can I have that map one more time, please, Don? Yes. So why is it that I'm applying for all of them? And there are a couple of them that they have more slope than the other ones. As far as the variance goes, the reason is, so I'm aware of the housing shortage in Lewiston, and I bought this piece of property and I did the small lot subdivision because it is hard to buy and develop property. As the first applicant that you talked to, who is a developer, he said it's very difficult to buy property and build. And so I bought this, I did the smaller lots. And the reason was it's hard to build and develop and have it be affordable. And we know that we need housing. So everything that you just said, as far as, well, couldn't you flip it and couldn't you cut it in half and then have this happy? Absolutely is the answer to that question. And it does raise some logistical questions as far as construction, because it is a townhome and you have to build these 2-hour firewalls and it has to go to the foundation to the roof, and it's complicated and tricky. The other part is, from a marketing standpoint, I have to have a neighborhood that has continuity. So if I just said, okay, let's do these 3 lots, and I think it could work on this lot where we have the garages the way that they're current. Then I've got this hodgepodge and it doesn't look like a consistent neighborhood. So the photos that I provided, that's another townhome unit, a townhome project that we did over in Clarkston. Those are built, people are living in them. They've been widely accepted. So imagine every other house has a different layout. So the purpose of the splitting the garages and not having those 2 garages be together is to have continuity through the neighborhood. So as far as, you guys have to follow these criteria and try to meet those standards. And couldn't this be met? I went from 4 feet recessed to 24 feet protruded. I mean, once you go past protruded, in my opinion, it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm applying for the variance. And the reason that I did 24 feet is, as I said, to have a garage deep enough that people can park their cars inside of. And then with these smaller lots, from a design standpoint, because the lots are skinny, there's not a lot of options for floor plan layouts. So on the piece of paper, you can draw the lines and go, okay, this works, we can make this happen. But now I have to go inside and I have to put walls and I have to put a kitchen and make all of that stuff work. And when it gets squished and squeezed and turned like that, it's very hard to get a floor plan to lay out. So that's why I went with the 28 feet, which is the 4 and the 24 versus some other random number.
Questions for applicant?
if you went with, if you went with a different, if you went with a different alternative, let's say, and I'm not suggesting which alternative, would it increase your costs in terms of building, designing? Cause I think you were getting to that point earlier where you mentioned that you talked about it being difficult to buy land in Lewiston and develop it. Would this add to your development, would it add to your development costs if you went with an alternative versus the one you're presenting to us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Emphatically, yes. I mean, the reason that I did these is because we've built 30 of them in Clarkston. And I know exactly what it takes to build. We did the whole layout based on that efficiency. So yes, I mean, if we have to change the plan, it's gonna cost more money, without a doubt. This is way harder than the first one. Okay, any questions?
Additional questions at this point for applicant? Because we are now at a point where we would close this and then we don't need to ask.
Before we do that.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
So for clarity, you said that, and again, my brain is full tonight. You said that the Clarkston layout is this same proposed.
Those pictures in the packet.
Yeah, so you've
Are-
reutilized the same, essentially.
The only difference between this one and that one is the lots are bigger and they're further apart. So the way those pictures look, it's gonna look better because the houses are further apart than the ones that we did in Clarkston. And the ones in Clarkston, I didn't do curb, sidewalk and gutter. These have full curb, sidewalk and gutter in them, which makes it even more spacious, being that much further from the street.
And just off the cuff, this is gonna sound really bizarre, the amount of joined living space, front to back, regardless of whether the garage is here or the garage is on the outside, does that change significantly?
Yes, so if you look at the current and the proposed, if the current picture is more like a rectangle, which makes the whole thing deeper this way,
Okay.
which means that there's more wall space adjoining. And we can get into the thick of it here, but when we do that separation wall, we actually build 3 walls. We build a wall in the middle and we insulate it and sheetrock both sides. And then we build another wall and we insulate and sheetrock, and we build another wall and insulate and sheetrock. So
That noise or fire safety?
both. We actually do a little bit more than the code requires, just so we don't have the noise transfer, and we separate the walls. It's actually kind of a side story. It's kind of cool. I had a guy say the people next door to him turn their TV really loud, and he would be walking into his front door and he could hear their TV and go inside the house and he couldn't hear the TV anymore. So that triple wall works.
I lived in an apartment unit where I could actually turn it right to the channel that the dude next door.
It's a darn good sound.
This clogged dancing pygmy that lived upstairs, but that's a whole different story. Okay, so yeah, I do understand. That's why I was wondering about the actual joined walls. And so that cost would come in there. Okay,
Come up with, so kind of stuck on the number 4 as far as the minimum variance to alleviate the hardship. Is cost the thing that's the bottom line, so to speak,
So
in that respect?
I could go from the 24-foot garage to a 20-foot garage, and it would take it from 28 feet down to 20 feet. But then I've got the problem, I think it makes the problem worse, because then more people are gonna park in the driveway. And I see as a detriment to the neighbors. I don't know if that answers the question or not. It actually costs me more to build 4-foot bigger garage. It's more trusses and more concrete and all of that stuff. But the purpose of that is to reduce the driveway parking or street parking.
yes, sir.
I just wanted to caution the commission, applicants' financial
Mhm.
situations are really not.
No, I understand it, and that's not what I was getting at. It was, so, but thank you.
Yeah, Shay, go.
This might be more for Joel. So as far as the 4 foot of recess, so that's just from the garage door, like where it's at, to be recessed, like kind of into the home, is that
Correct.
correct?
Yep.
Okay. So is there a way that it designed with that recess? Right?
That's the current design, the way, the plan that you have that shows the current design, that is the design. And by right, it doesn't have to be just 4 feet. You can actually push the house all the way out to 10 feet. And so now the house can be 10 feet from the sidewalk and the garage is still 20 feet. And you've met the R3 2021 revision.
That you lose front yard.
And then your house is 10 feet from the sidewalk, which.
Losing your back.
Okay,
You don't have to have a photo of what this original would look like, do you?
I don't. It's been built in town a couple times. It looks like a military barracks to me. Because it's so long, it's rectangular, and then you've got this little protrusion and the roof comes over the top. And so the roof is just a straight line, 100 feet long. That looks like a military barracks.
Or garages in the middle,
Correct.
two garages in the middle.
Guess I do have another question. So, this is part of of a larger neighborhood, is that correct?
That, the way that this is zoned and platted, this is the only spot where this is gonna happen. Is it?
So when I look at, the conditions applying to property that are in the same zone or vicinity, it applies specifically just to this right here, this neighborhood, not to another phase or anything like that.
It's the whole, it's all of it. It's the whole subdivision. That, my subdivision,
Right.
what you're looking at on the map,
Yeah, so
this right.
there's no other subdivision that abuts to it that's part of this at all or anything like that.
What
Okay,
you're, what you're going for approval on
All
is that right, Joel? Yeah. Okay.
so unique.
just in those right there. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I do like the fact that there's sidewalk all the way around. That doesn't show in this picture that you've given us, but it will be, everybody will have a sidewalk in front of their garage.
Yeah, so it's from, so you got curb, planter strip and sidewalk, so it's actually more like 10 feet from the edge of the driveway all the way out to the street.
Um. Twenty 2021, were we on the board in 2021? When did we?
This is our third year.
This is, so we saw the original. I'm just trying to remember if. Questions as to the setbacks and the house protruding instead of the garage protruding. I'm not pulling that forward in my brain. Okay, any more questions for our applicant?
I don't have it.
Okay, I think we're just gonna slap about here for a little bit. Thank you very much, Dan. And of course, we've grilled Joel. So I think at this particular juncture, it's time to go over these particular relevant criteria and standards. So I'm gonna go ahead and close this public hearing. Are any objections? No? No? All right. So as I understand it, our criteria for a variance request, granting or denial, are 4 and only 4. What's that? And that, yeah. I agree. So, I'm just looking at our guidance documentation. So our first criteria and standard regarding this variance request. Standards, facts, and considerations are hereby declared as reasons for the decision. Okay, condition. Yes, sir.
Just to point out, I know there are only 4 listed or 4 bulleted or numbered, but it says first, where it's shown that there's not a right or special privilege, but only upon showing of an undue hardship. So just keep that in mind.
Yes.
That doesn't have a number on it.
So undue hardship is our primary justification, yeah.
Okay.
Which pose, okay, so, right, so the variance is a request to deviate from the strict application of zoning ordinances. So our beginning one, conditions apply to the property that do not apply generally to other properties in the same zone or vicinity and which pose an undue hardship because of characteristics of the site as a result of lot size or shape, topography, or other special features. And that would be our first one. And since we are considering this as a unit, because it's not necessarily touching any of the surrounding properties, I think we start by considering that just this particular not generally apply to the other properties in the same zone, or vicinity. And we have so Canyon Crest was it across the street?
I'm gonna pull up the zone map.
But that's why I asked the question specifically to this question, to this number, is because this is in and of itself, it's a self-contained.
Yes, very,
So
I
this is-
agree.
So this, from my point of view, this applies only from house to house, not another
Not
neighborhood.
adjacent.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, that is fair.
okay.
I do appreciate the eye towards uniformity of the units, because that does give a cohesive identification of a specific neighborhood or village, as the case may be, or the small lot. And we see that around town in the existing ones that we do have as a uniformity in appearance. So we'll go with that.
I'm sure.
Yes, sir.
So just for clarification, maybe the reference to other zone and vicinity properties in the same zone or other, or in the same zone or vicinity. It's zone or vicinity. This is the only property in that particular area that's zoned R3,
Okay.
but it's also to vicinity. And the condition is the topography. So might just want to think about, does the topography of the applicant's property differ so much more from the other properties around it?
In the flanking, like properties across from like the Clearview Point Drive or.
Yep, zone or vicinity. So the neighboring properties. So Canyon Crest, the single family homes to the south.
Clarification. No. Right, that was a PUD?
Yeah.
Thank you, which is a different thing than we're doing here.
It's a different zone that's in this vicinity.
Yes, I got that.
Yep.
I got that.
Yep, that's a different zone. This is, the applicant's property is the only property in this vicinity that's zoned R3.
So the applicant says that it's a hardship to topography because of the slope, and that's one reason why he wants to separate the garage so he can make the yard address the slope in the yard and not in the garage. But the applicant would like, that's his reasoning for the hardship. I'm gonna point that out, so maybe we can progress.
The hardship is safety and the
Absolutely,
grade.
yes.
That is what is in the application.
Would like to reiterate in the staff report and that the driveway itself.
Per lot. No. Across two lots.
The safety of having the garage is separate outweighs them having them together. I think. I don't like the idea of having. I don't know, just in my mind. I just think that's an issue, and I don't know if that's addressed in that one. Hardship, lot size, shape, topography, or other special features.
So having the garages together, I wouldn't call that a condition
No.
necessarily.
But it is a result of the lot size, possibly.
Really looking at the safety factor. We're
No, we are not on this one, you're right, you're not.
All we're looking at
Specifically the
is,
driveway.
On the hardship.
I mean, I'm looking at it as far as the topography goes. Just in doing projects on my property, I've got a greater slope. I look at everything in terms of rise over run.
But
There's the construction person. in me.
But I think that's why I was curious about the cost, because undue hardship, unless there's a hard and fast definition for that, that's a pretty amorphous term.
Yeah.
I mean, undue hardship for an applicant can be anywhere from redesign to exorbitant costs in terms of what they have to do to make sure that they're in conformance. So I'm struggling more with the term of what do I consider an undue hardship? Because I think the applicant makes pretty clearly that he views it as it's topography. That's the issue. But the topography is touching on, he's mentioned he will have to redesign things, which leads to an additional cost. So I mean, I don't think there's anything necessarily that is stopping me from saying an undue hardship is cost or additional design.
That's also to that, it's what I'm hearing is if the developer, Mr. Young, has in fact, with these very same layouts, already completed a very similar development. That's, they've worked the kinks out, so to speak. And that means his teams are gonna be more efficient, they're more familiar with the cost of actually the individual developments, the cost to build, the timelines to build. And it will require going back to an architecture or an engineer, I think, to redesign and then figure out building layouts. So it will delay development quite, I would presume, quite a long time, and of course, impact to the budget.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think when you're looking at number one, like Joel said, do conditions apply to this property that do not, I mean, that's the question, that do not generally to other properties in the same zone or vicinity? And I know that neighborhood through and through there. The topography is, I mean, that's all of Lewiston. The topography is an issue everywhere. So I don't think that it's specific to that property, that the topography is so different that it sets it aside. That's kind of where I'm stuck, is I don't see this as being some specially set aside property. And
We don't have cliffs of Dover behind it is what you're saying.
Yeah, you know. I mean, I actually think there are, you know, properties that exist that are actually worse,
Well, yeah.
you know.
Okay, so let's shelve this one for just a second, because we're kind of spinning our wheels a little. Number two, because we gotta meet all of them, right?
Yeah.
All right. Number two, the variance is not necessary as a result of actions of the applicant, will not grant the applicant a special privilege, and is necessary for the preservation of the property right possessed by owners of other properties in the same zone and vicinity. It doesn't impact other property owners, I think, in any capacity at this point. It might impact future owners, if you suck at parking and have to hit a driveway that aren't. I don't believe it's a result of any action on the applicant's part other than to presume an improved plan.
But at the same time, it is, because by proposing a small lot, I mean, that's the thing, it's a flat plot of land. So the initial design, I guess I look at everything in terms of if I'm looking at purchasing something and developing and designing something. I mean, yes, absolutely, I want to get the most bang for my buck
Yeah,
and
how
the
many
most out of it I
units do you
can. But I also have to understand what I'm looking at when I go to buy it.
And that met all the criteria at the time.
But if I'm proposing small lot, I know what my parameters are.
So you're saying that he should have went and looked at the codes about small lot development before designing his plan?
Preemption.
Yeah.
It's, if we had changed the zoning code midstream of the project,
Well, you don't know when.
Grandfathered in.
it would have been, would have been grandfathered in, et cetera. But if it existed, if we changed it in 2021, it was in existence.
I mean, I remember way back in 2022, and we were actually debating number two for that particular variance, and there was disagreement around that particular property related to the applicant had bought it, knowing the condition of the property at the time. I tend to side more on that there's a lot of variables involved, and I'm not a designer, or developer, I don't necessarily think it's super duper easy to do that. So I sort of lean the other way. I'm not fully for or against. I just have dueling thoughts on number two related to that.
Well, my thought on that particular thing, if he came forward because a plan was not required when he moved forward and asked for it. He presented a plan because he's probably, if we drive over to Clarkston, we're gonna be looking at essentially what he already proposed, which means they've already had something very similar drafted, which might have been a modification of an existing plan. I mean, and this is all speculation, but in my opinion, he came forward more prepared than required by the city in many ways by having the plan already drafted and in place as a presentation, not only to the board here or the commission here, but to the council.
Same time, we can't take another city's.
No, I gotcha.
Yeah.
I gotcha. That was,
See if
that
that
I
works.
didn't ask. I don't know if he just went like scratch off Clarkston. You know, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is in many ways, when you say he should have known what he was proposing to build when he bought the property, well, I think he did. just not the actual criteria specific to the developments of those lots.
And so what is photo number 11? It says, even after his retaining wall was installed, there is significant cross slope that would create safety hazards for both vehicles and pedestrians between units. See photo number 11.
Well, the photos are numbered.
It's this one attached to his application.
Okay.
Wave it over here, dude. All right, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that is photo number.
It's got 11 up in the upper right-hand corner in white.
Thank you.
Oh, there you go. I see that.
There it is.
Look at us. Okay, so this is Candy Crest subdivision to the city of Lewiston, phase 1. How about, let's look at 3. Authorization of the variance will not be material, detrimental, or injurious.
Injurious.
Thank you, to other property or owner of property in the same zone and vicinity. Oh. Anybody else,
Yeah.
or otherwise conflict with public interest.
Yeah.
Um,
I think he clears number 3.
does anybody disagree with that assessment?
No.
No, I
Okay.
think that's the one we can be unanimous on.
Yeah.
All right, so we're unanimous on 3. All right, variance requested is the minimum variance, which will alleviate the hardship. And there's, yeah,
It ties back to number 1. It ties back to number 1 for me.
Yeah, 1 and 4 are.
Yeah.
I can say now, I mean, just my tug of war on number 4 is that, the minimum variance, I mean, the one proposed is not a minimum variance.
Yeah.
No.
And, you know, I mean,
his alternative
I
to
will
what,
say, I mean, I'll say, I don't disagree with everything that he said. As far as, you know, I mean, I've seen driveways that are together and not the same, and they just look stupid.
yeah.
And I agree with those. I mean, I've seen houses with garages out front, I think they're fine, you know, but we have to be exact with this and, you know, interpret this. So, I mean, but with that, that doesn't pass.
So I'm here to tell you that as a property owner, I don't want anybody's crap touching my crap. And it doesn't matter if it's your kids, your dogs, whatever, chickens, whatever it is, or your driveway touching my driveway.
Yeah.
So my first act on anything I do is put a fence up because I'm that pleasant. But, so of course I am much more leaning into his modification plan on a personal note. But I also see, and I do understand as a developer and a marketing individual, you want the appeal, visual appeal to the neighborhoods, which of course lock those purchases of those up quickly. Instead of delaying where somebody's like, well, this kind of sucks and I don't like this layout, but there's nothing else to buy. And so, but I have to unfortunately agree with Kevin.
Yep.
I don't believe it's the minimum variance.
And it is not ours to define what the minimum variance should be. Correct?
No, shouldn't it be? We have to have a concept of what the minimum variance is to weigh it
We're getting into
against.
we're getting into the design of everything.
And yeah, and see, so that's where the problem lies.
Well, so my struggle with that is then what are we weighing this against though? I mean, I can think of 100 different, as an example, I can think of 100 different designs, but they're all
It's not our-
hypothetical.
Yeah, it's not our
Right, but
job.
the thing that, I mean, and I've actually long felt this, but I was never able to really put my finger on it. But cause I've asked questions in the past during things and the answer given to me was, well, that'll be discussed in the building permit.
Yep.
So,
No
and this
clue,
is,
people.
and this is where the almost catch-22 is. I mean, unless the developer comes forward and has a building concept
Okay.
on the front of it, that kind of thing, and then can get advice or whatnot there. But right now, that's what we're dealing with, is that the building permit came after all that.
As it generally does
And I
though.
feel,
Right.
I trust me,
So,
I
like,
feel terrible
So
about
based on
but-
that, question for, I mean, forgive my tired brain at almost 8 o'clock at night,
Yeah, we're all
but
punchy.
wouldn't that make
Yeah.
it so that nobody could ever? In my mind, I'm following this logically, not even
Sure.
taking it to the applicant. If minimum variance is defined at some point in the process after the variation, there's no way that anybody could meet it unless we design a minimum variance at a meeting. Unless the applicant took like 2 or 3 steps forward and
But that's where-
presented it here to us.
That's where that's where it falls into the fact that this is not the minimum variance.
I mean, according to that, yeah. I
I
have
think
to
what
agree.
I think what I get stuck on is the way I'm understanding it is the primary reason for the variance is the topography. That is the issue. When I look at the staff report very clearly points out that not able to identify any particular safety hazard that would be created from a 2% driveway cross slope or reasoning that a step in elevation between lots was required. So I'm looking at it in terms of if staff is saying the initial plan is fully functional as presented, as proposed, that there, and if engineering is telling us that they don't see an issue with the current topography, and that's that it's causing a hardship because of that, I don't think that we could say that this is the minimum variance as a
And then
result
that
of
could-
that.
For me, that gets into, if we did approve the variance, it would be granting a special privilege
Yes.
that would not necessarily be afforded to others.
And I'm gonna come back to, because Jennifer's not here.
That's why I'm pointing out things in the staff report.
A variance is a modification of the bulk and placement requirements of the ordinance as to lot size, lot coverage, width, depth, front yard, side yard, rear yard setbacks, parking space, height of buildings, yada, 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 and other ordinance provisions. So it's a deviation from the zoning ordinances. And if in fact in 2021, we all sat down here and kumbaya our way into what a small lot development requirements are, then it would be contradicting everything that we
Yeah.
thought that small lot development
Yeah,
should look like moving forward so that we don't get more of
yeah. I mean,
whatever the North 40 thing is. I'll be perfectly candid. I like everything unique and different. So these
Same.
condo type things are really hard for me, but when I drive by that North 40 street, well, it's not Stewart, but whatever it
Juniper
is.
and Warner and all.
They don't hurt my feelings. The ones down on Magnolia, I find to be they're beautiful. Just not Cindy. But these are all my feels about what he's proposing versus what zone and code requires, and he does not meet the 4 criteria for the variance that legally we are being held to it,
right.
to identify. Do we have any disagreement with that part?
And I think you can maybe number 3, you
Show of
might,
hands for number 4.
Yeah, let's do that. Is it the minimum variance, people? Number 4. We got number 3 hard and fast, but what's number 4? Is he proposing? Yes, sir.
If there's anyone struggling with number 4, you might want to read the applicant's answer to the question on his application. And see if he
You have that up and
persuades you to do that in his answer. It's on the bottom of page 78 of the meeting packet.
All right.
So criteria number 4 on the sheet is listed as number E on his application answers.
Okay, here we go. I got it. Is the variance requested the minimum variance which will alleviate the hardship? If so, then describe how. Be specific in discussing why the amount of the variance requested cannot be reduced. The variance requested will alleviate the hardship. With the cross slope in the lots, the proposed floor plans will allow sufficient front yard space to absorb the grade difference in the properties. It might be possible to slightly reduce the garage size, but this could adversely affect people trying to park inside their garages. So functionality of the proposed development. This would add to the cluttered feel, having multiple cars parked in the driveways. Currently, the standard says the garage is to be 4-foot recess from. I think that there's a typo there. It says 4-foot recess from the garage, but what he's talking about is 4-foot recess from the house.
Yes.
Okay, the garage depth on the proposed plan is 24 feet from the house and 19 feet from the covered porch. This is a variance from the total standard of 28 feet from the house and 23 from the covered porch. This variance request is being made by for the entirety of the Canyon Crest South subdivision. Okay. So alleviate hardship. And most respectfully to the applicant, this is he's trying to make a more appealing, not just aesthetically, I mean, like functionality. He's trying to make these homes more individual owner appealing and useful. But that does not unfortunately fall within.
I was gonna say that, yeah, I mean, I can see that being I can see that being the undue hardship. I don't see.
Selling them?
Well, no, not selling them, but I mean, in terms of design and workarounds. Because that is a hardship to somebody who's trying to design a lot or design property.
And already has all the knowledge associated with the development of it.
But I'm saying even if it meets number one, I don't think it meets, or it helps meet number one, I don't think it meets number four either
Yeah.
way. So I mean, for me personally, I can quibble with maybe you meet 2 out of 4, 3 out of 4, 1 out of 4.
Not forever.
But you
Yeah.
don't, at least to me, in my opinion, I don't think number 4 is met.
Big man defined as.
As referenced to the applicant's answer to number 4's question, number E. It says the variance requested will alleviate the hardship. It absolutely will. It's just not the minimum variance.
Okay.
And red is on the applicant to provide the for us to meet all 4.
So I'll be perfectly candid, the restrictions that we are held to as a commission on what we can or cannot take into consideration. This goes against.
I know.
Yeah.
With you.
I'm with you, I'm 100% with you.
We've had a lot of these lately.
Yeah, yeah, and I am very regretful.
Yep.
But I'm gonna have to call for a motion to deny the variance unless I hear objection from someone.
Second, that one.
Because it does not meet the 4 criteria required.
Agreed.
I'm open to
Second
it.
that motion.
She needs a motion. She's asking for
Oh,
a
you
motion.
want to call for a motion? Okay, I will make a motion to direct staff to draft a reason statement denying variance 24-2.
I will second that.
Don, do you have enough of the why? Will we hear from Jennifer?
We probably asked as many questions.
Jennifer call.
She's gonna be replaying this one back over and over again repeatedly.
I think you guys did.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. We have a second. All in favor of the motion as defined? Aye. Any opposed? Mr. Young? No apologies.
You guys did your best. Thank you. I will be back in 2 weeks
Look forward to it.
to try to amend the ordinance, which procedurally they told me is next.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's how you
Thank
do it.
I look forward to it. Maybe we'll be more pleasant. Okay, people, I'm tired and punchy now.
Yes.
Let me find my place.
Staff communications.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so courting. All right, staff communications. Joel, do we have any?
So just to let you know, the new comprehensive plan is working on an action plan, I'm sorry, a work plan to implement it through a committee consisting of Gabe and Maureen and Kathy Schroeder from council and Mayor Johnson and some staff, so.
Emily.
And Emily.
And Emily, I'm sorry, and we've been meeting,
To be fair, you weren't in the
I know,
last
I
meeting.
know.
every 2 weeks.
We had to.
Generally every 2 weeks, and so we'll be bringing the commission at some point in the not too distant future some workload to do code amendments and rezones, or at least consider that. And so that's gonna be a priority.
I got a rezone request for you.
Yeah, I think we are there.
We're heading down that path.
That is, yeah, that is something.
Exactly what you were talking about tonight is.
Yeah.
Yes.
FYI.
Yeah, so I was sympathizing with you as you were saying it, because I'm like, I don't necessarily disagree with you.
In this.
Right, and I,
It doesn't exist currently,
Yeah.
however, we're
Not
trying.
business, but I know you're all meeting, is anybody addressing these goddamn boxcar storage? Anyone? Not as, anyone.
I don't think so.
Downtown riverfront development.
We're going to, talk about shipping containers. Gonna be on the city council for one day extension.
The defunct, see, I have asked council members over and over and over again, if you're to move forward on the development of the comprehensive plan.
The train,
We have got to
We
talk
are.
about, yes, and I could not contribute or volunteer for that, although I did want to say, hey, I'll serve as a backup, but that's the nail I would continue to pound. Is the boxcar storage within the community. On the deadlines.
Oh, okay. I'll send it to the website.
Yeah, it is. It's exactly it. And it needs to be addressed because you're not gonna develop this amazing space.
You're right.
And we're just all incarcerated by tagged boxcars.
and
But
I think that's part of the comprehensive review.
it has to.
And about either contradictory things in code or zoning. Because you're trying to, in my mind, you're trying to meet multiple demands at once.
But those
Sometimes it
demands
can-
haven't come forward to the table, is what I'm saying. If you look at the state of Idaho rail line publications, the one thing a rail owner company cannot do is block development within the city limits. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Okay,
Let's
barring
carry.
any more fun, can we go home? Can I-
Who's coming to the next meeting?
Oh, damn it.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'll
okay.
be here.
I will be here.
Not.
You two are almost fired. That's it. They're gonna be.
Y'all are
next-
really
Next committees.
forcing our or making us work for our salary.
I know, right? I wanna.
You're gonna make me actually have to make sense.
I know.
Gosh, because there'll only be 4 other people to rescue me.
At some point, we're gonna have to have wine and cheese, because these are
Is
getting
that,
ridiculous.
will he be?
I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
And non-alcoholic
well,
beer.
We'll know more later, won't we?
whiskey and
I
hot
move
dogs.
for adjournment.
Let's let everybody go home. I'm open to a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's go home.
Kevin, were you my first?
Yes. I was so.
Gabe jumped. He was very moving.
We were very moved.
Have a ACT
Thank you,
meeting
everyone,
at
for
band
coming.
practice.